Welcome to the Sundance Marinas seminar. Today we're going to talk about docking, line handling, and close quarters maneuvering. So our objectives today are to confidently approach and land in a slip, understand wind and current and how that affects your technique on how you want to approach the dock, how you tie and deploy essential docking knots, and use spring lines effectively, and then how to communicate clearly with your crew during close quarters maneuvering. Theories, you want to do your angle approach. So if you're coming into one of these slips in the river, you're going to want to approach it at like a 20 or 30 degree angle approach. Neutral is your friend, so you never want to go too fast in a boat approaching a dock because you can't really go, you can't dead stop. You have to hit reverse. There's no brakes on a boat. But you also want to make sure you're going fast enough where you still have control over your boat, because when you go too slow with your boat, you're not going to be able to steer it as effectively. So the wind and current compensation on the Columbia River, you want to approach into the current whenever possible. So bow upstream is the best kind of docking you can do on the river. If the wind is pushing you off the dock, you want to do a slightly steeper angle approach. And if the wind is pinning you up against the dock, a shallower angle and controlled fender placement. You should always have your fenders out before you enter a marina too. I've seen a lot of people not do that. And then you want to use short bursts of throttle instead of sustained power. So if we're going to look at the angle of approach, you're going to kind of approach it at that 20 degrees. And when you get closer to the dock, you want to put it in neutral and get ready to use your bow thruster if you have a motorboat. As you approach, you want to always approach into the current whenever possible. If you are pushing off the dock, you want to do a slightly steeper approach. And if the wind is pushing you to the dock, you want to do a shallower approach. So, docking in single slips with current. Assess current and direction and the strength before approach. Use the current to your advantage whenever possible, so you want to ferry your boat. Be prepared to use the current to push the bow or stern in, and use spring lines to control the position against the current. Maintain slow, controlled speed, but have enough power to counter the current. So we're going to learn about a little bit of knots. We're going to talk about cleat hitch knots. I see a lot of these tied incorrectly at the marinas, and I'll tie them correctly. I did bring some line here. I did bring a cleat, so we'll practice that at the end. But to start, you want to go around the far horn and wrap the rope around the base of the cleat under both horns, and then you're basically going to bring it over the top of the cleat, wrap the other way around, and then you're going to make a loop and you're going to pull under, so it'll be a figure eight. If the top knot right here does not cross like that and it goes back around to the same side of the cleat that it just came off on, your cleat hitch is incorrect. You have to take the rope and actually flip it the other way around, and that's all you have to do to fix that. And you'll know you tied it correctly because the free end exists in the same direction that the loaded line enters the cleat. All right. We're also going to talk about bowlines. I know we have one sailor here today besides myself. Bowlines are really, really important in sailing. It's what you do when you hank your sail on. That's the knot that holds your sail into place. You're going to create a small loop in the rope, leaving a long end, which is your working end. You'll pass the rope through from underneath, and you'll wrap the working end around the standing part of the rope and bring the working end back through the loop, and you'll pull on that working end and it'll tighten, and you'll know that this is the correct knot because the bite of the rope will be inside of the loop, not outside of the loop. So line handling knots, round turn, 2 half hitches. This is a great knot for tying fenders. If you don't have like clip-on fenders, this is how I tie all of my fender lines. So you're going to take basically your lifeline, you're gonna make a complete one full turn. So you're gonna see 2 lines when you're looking at the rope because you wanna go one full time around it. So you're really essentially looping twice. And then you're gonna bring the working end of the rope over that and wrap under, and you're gonna do that one more time and pull. And that's gonna secure your fender lines. We want to talk about prop lock because I'm pretty sure everybody experiences this at some point in their life. What is prop lock and why it happens? Prop lock is the sideways force created by a rotating propeller, most noticeable going in reverse on a single screw boat. This describes the descending blade has more bite in the water, which creates a sideways thrust. And depending on which way your prop turns depends on which way your prop lock goes. So for instance, most common direction, right-handed props. The stern will walk to port in reverse. So, which is why you want a spring line. If you have a big boat with no bow thrusters, or if you have a full-keeled sailboat, you need to have a spring line to get off of the dock. Otherwise, you're going to end up getting pushed up against the dock. You're going to be facing the wrong way in the marina. You're going to have a bad time. I see this happen. We've all seen it happen. So the best thing to do, in theory, let's see, I know you're upriver, you face downriver. Is your boat up or downriver? Which way does your boat face? Sir? No, I know where your boat goes. What do you know what slip your boat is in? Does it face upriver or downriver? Mm-hmm.
Downriver, I believe.
Okay, so you'll want to use.
I haven't put it in yet.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. You are going to be. You're in AC row, right? At Harbor 1. Yeah, I think that you're going to be. Well, you could pull in either way with that slip. It would be easier if you put your bow upriver. Now, everybody in that row is opposite of that, but it would make it a little bit easier as far as leaving the dock. So if you were facing bow upriver, you're going to use a forward spring line, and the forward spring line basically connects from the forward cleat of the dock to midship. And the aft spring line is exactly opposite of that. It's the aft cleat on the dock to the midship. Okay, so forward spring line to leave, stern out departure. So it's best for wind and current pushing you into the dock, tight fairways, or getting stern out safely before committing. So to set up, you're attach your forward spring line to the bow cleat and back to the dock, to the midship or slightly aft of the midship. Leave your stern line temporarily and remove all of your other lines so you just have that spring line on there. And when you do your execution, you're going to turn your wheel away from the dock, or you're going to use your tiller towards the dock, and you're going to shift forward idle. And the spring line is going to hold. That is so rude of me. I'm sorry. The forward spring. All right, so you're going to turn the wheel away from the dock, and you're going to shift into a forward idle, and the spring will hold the bow in place, and the stern will walk out away from the dock. Once the stern is clear, you go into neutral, release your spring, and reverse the rest of the way out. The most important part of this is to make sure you're not using too much force with your engine, because that's when injuries can happen. You don't need a lot of force. Really, just idle speed is enough to do a spring line. And why this works is the engine pushes forward and the spring prevents the forward motion, which converts the thrust into a pivot instead of forward motion or a prop walk. So aft spring line to leave is pretty much the exact same thing, but opposite. So it's best for when the wind or current is pushing stern into the dock. You need the bow for clearance first. So the first thing you're going to do is run your aft spring line. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's the aft. I'm sorry, guys. Give me one sec. She's going to take that, probably, I would assume. All right, so the best for aft spring line is, we're going to start out from the top, sorry, for Paul's sake. Best for wind and current pushing stern into the dock, needs bow for clearance first. You're going to set up, you're going to run your aft spring line from the stern cleat to like midship or a little bit forward of midship. You're going to leave that bow line temporarily, and you're going to remove all of your other lines. And then when you execute, you're going to put your wheel toward the dock this time, or your tiller away from the dock, and you're going to shift into reverse idle. And then this aft spring prevents backwards movement, and the bow walks out away from the dock, neutral, release your spring, shift forward, and then you'll depart. So Columbia River considerations: current often replaces wind as the dominant force here. But it's really about the time of day. So like if you have a big boat, I oftentimes recommend, if you're like trying to pull into a new marina, figure out when slack tide is, because that's going to be your best bet for like having no communication with the river, and it's just like you and your boat figuring out how to dock and how that works without other elements in the way. Slack tide is the best when you're learning. Current increases rudder effectiveness, which is really, really nice for sailboats that are leaving, because when you have no motion with a sailboat, you really don't have any control over what you're doing. So the current actually makes it a little bit easier for a sailboat to leave the dock. So as opposed to being in like a bay, being out on the river, sailboats are going to have an easier time navigating away from their dock than they are if they were in a protected bay with no current. You're always going to set up to leave into the current when possible. So that's why I recommended backing your boat into a sea row, because yes, it's going to be a little more difficult backing in, but when you leave, you're going to have such an easier time. And it's definitely harder to leave than come into a slip, because you already have all of that motion when you're coming into a slip. So going into it backwards is pretty easy. But you also increase the load on the spring line, so you want to make sure you use the proper cleat hitch knot, right? Because you don't want to tear off your cleat. That can become really, really dangerous. You also want to make sure you can easily release it, which is important, because if you tie it wrong, you're not going to be able to easily release that line. So common mistakes, I see people use too much throttle. Idle is enough. You really just need a little bit of motion to make this work. Releasing spring under heavy load without being in neutral, so like not communicating with your crew and having someone untie that spring line too soon before you release that tension to it. Turning the wheel the wrong way, so making sure if you're doing the bow, you're pushing away from the dock, but if you're doing the stern, you're going into the dock. And then letting crew stand in the bite of the line. That's dangerous. I think my AI image was pretty funny with that one. And then forgetting fenders during your pivot. So obviously when you're leaving the dock, you're always gonna have your fenders on, I would hope. But when you're coming into the marina, before you enter, always make your docking plan. If you're soloing or if you're with your crew, tell them the plan, get your fenders out before you enter the marina, so there's less commotion and there's less all of that when you're trying to successfully enter your dock space. So safety impetus, you're never gonna try to muscle the boat by hand. And that goes for getting off of the boat too. Never get off of the boat too soon. You never wanna jump. You never wanna put yourself between the boat and the dock, because boats are very heavy and you can get really hurt. You never wanna wrap the line around your hand to pull the boat. It's a terrible idea. The boat will win every time. You're going to want to keep your hands clear of cleats that are under load. That goes back to the talk that we just had, where if it's under load, it can rip a cleat out, and that's highly dangerous. And then you can use gloves if the lines are heavily loaded, so you don't get all like ripped up in your hands like that. So we're just going to go to the next thing. We're going to practice knots. Yes.
You're pulling out and you want to keep your bow in so your stern can come out, and you're talking about a tie.
Yep.
What? I only do the tie that you talked about to begin with, what that's called.
Uh-huh.
Is it a different tie?
So it's the same. So you would do the cleat knot. So you would tie your line. This line would be at the dock. This line would be around your cleat. And it would be a normal cleat knot where you would figure eight it and then pull through.
You have all the pressure on it.
Because you put it into, so once you stop idling, once you effectively move your bow out, you put it back into neutral, and that releases the load on the line, because your boat's immediately going to want to walk back a little bit, and you're going to get that slack to where you can just release that line, throw it to shore. That line is, you can wrap it so you can pull it back, but I do that because I'm a sailboat and I only have one prop way back there, but I don't know what your boat looks like underneath of it. Might not be a great idea to pull the line in, especially since you come back to Packmar or have your stuff set up at River Place. We're going to show that cleat outside, because I don't know of an effective way to tie a cleat with a cleat that's not connected to a dock. I just have a cleat. So we're going to do that one after. I'm going to show you a couple knots that are pretty important. So I like, no matter what, to have a stopper knot at the end of every single one of my ropes. And what that does is it's going to make my rope end stay nice. It's also going to make sure if my bowline or anything becomes loose, it's a second stopper for it. So I learned this in sailing school a long time ago, and this is my favorite story that I can ever think. Every time I make a stopper knot, I think this. So you make your little alien, you're gonna strangle him, and you're gonna strangle him again, and you're gonna take the end of the rope and you're gonna pull up. And that is a stopper knot right there. And I have this in every single one of my ropes on my sailboat, because if your bowline breaks, this is gonna stop your sail from being out in the water. It's really important. So, stopper knot, my little alien story. I think of my instructor too every single time I do it. It's pretty fun. So we're gonna make a bowline, and to do a bowline, You usually want to loop it around something. So you're going to have the end of your rope. You loop it through whatever you're trying to make your loop for. You're going to take a little loop. You're going to spin it once. You're going to take the working end of the rope. You're going to pull it through. And I usually just take my whole hand and hold this little clump. You're going to take the end of your string or your rope. You're going to grab it, and then back to the working end. You're going to pull it, and then you have your bowline. And you know your bowline is right because this is on the inside of the loop and not on the outside of the loop. Yes.
I learned a different way.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. So, circle, twist one way, one clockwise, take the working end, pull it up, so you have a little loop. So you should have like 2 little loops. I just kind of hold it all into place. Well, I take the free hand, loop it through there.
I like your way better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do it with one hand too. It's been a while, but I can bowline with one hand. But we'll start with this one. So do you want to try it, Elaine? Okay. So the last one we're going to do, because I think that a lot of people don't tie their fenders correctly, is when I say the 2 full round half hitch knot, that's not 1 full loop. You want to go around again. So you're really looping twice. So you have 1 full time around there. And then you're going to go over, under, over, under. And that's how you would tie your fender line. And then those are also something I put stopper knots in as well, just to make it easy for me so I don't lose my fenders, because that's a bad day when you lose your fenders. I've done that before. Fenders. I love that. That's awesome. Safety first. And that's smart because you never know when there's going to be an emergency and you're going to get pushed up against something. There's been plenty of times where I've been on my sailboat, taking the sails down, went to go start the engine doesn't start. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, now I have no power. I'm going to hoist my sails up while I figure out what's going on with the engine. So it's really nice to have those fenders because the river has, you're going to get pushed to lee. And if you get stuck up against, like the shipping yards or anything like that. I stare at a boat that's broken right now that's pushed up against the shipping yard over on somewhere over on the Washington side. So that's a thing. Leeward is a thing. What other questions do you have, Elaine? All right. Well, I wish I could take you guys all out on the water. That was going to be the exciting part of today. Let's talk about how to easily go into the dock. And I think this is really, really smart no matter what. When you leave and when you enter the dock, you want to have everything set up. So all you have to do is step off of the boat and grab your line and pull. So once you have your line essentially like looped through your cleat, right? This is on the boat. We're going to say it's right here. I flanked my line, so I just do like that, and I put it right midship. And you want to make sure that is on the outside of your lifelines. And then I just basically take this little section and I drape it over top of my lifeline. So that way when I get off of the boat, I don't have to be holding my line when I get off of the boat. I just hop off of the boat, I grab the line as I'm walking down the dock, and this will not tangle. And you'll be able to just walk with it down. And that's how I recommend everybody set up their lines before they get to the dock. Does that make sense? We can go to a boat and I can show you guys that too.